All right, we're live. I was all caught up in the chat, chatting to people coming in from all over. So we're going to give it a couple of minutes here before we start. And I love seeing a bunch of familiar faces and, well, not faces, familiar avatars and names. And yes, we got people coming in from as far. Whoa, we got Ensenada, Mexico checking in. Very cool. And Mongolia. How is that even possible that someone from Mongolia is able to call in? This is such a cool thing. I love doing these events. We got Portland, we got Seattle, we got New York, California, Scotland. That's pretty amazing. We're going to give it a couple of minutes here so let people come in. I want to say thank you to everybody who's coming in for this program. We really appreciate you coming in. These events for us are relatively new. So I've been at Blurb for 15 years, and we really didn't do a lot of events like this until recently. So I really like this. I've been at Review Santa Fe, in and out of that over the past couple of days. If you don't know what that is, it's a juried event where you, as a photographer, you submit work. And if you're chosen, I think they choose 100 photographers from all over the world. If you're chosen, you can come in and show your work to a very select group of editors and agents and art buyers and curators and all that stuff. It's been really fun bouncing in and out and seeing a lot of the photography that's being shown, and also meeting a bunch of the reviewers way back in the day. So I walked into this thing last night, and this woman looks at me. She's one of the photographers showing work, and she goes, "I remember you. You won the grand prize in 2005. And for a second, I was like, did I? Did I actually win something in 2005? And then I was like, I don't think so. And then someone else came up to me and said, no, I met you at Review Santa Fe in 2004. So apparently I was here in the early 2000s. I have no memory of that, and I don't think I won anything. So I think she was mistaken. But of course, I claimed that I knew what she was talking about and said, oh yeah, of course I won the grand prize. And on a side note here, if you look in the chat, Isabel Miranda, who's from Albuquerque, is one of the people whose work I'm going to sequence tonight. I'd never met anyone in person doing one of these events like this. And I walked into Review Santa Fe, and Isabel's like, are you Dan? Yep. So before we get started, again, thank you. And thanks to Air and Michelle, who are behind the scenes. You can't see them. Michelle just ducked a typhoon, so she's got that going for her. She's tough. So they're behind the scenes running the technological side of this little shindig. And we have those two to thank for the production, because without them, I wouldn't be here. So I just came back from teaching a workshop in Morocco, and just to put pressure on all of you to make books, because that's my secret goal. In a week after coming back, I'd made 6 test books. I have 5 of them so far, and there's 1 more coming in the mail. So this is a Mad Cloud Digest. That's number 1. I'm starting with like the least expensive. 6x9 trade book with a brand new matte cover. That's number 2. 8x10 photo book with really nice eggshell paper. That's number 3. And then the giant 11x13 hardcover monster with a linen cover, which I'm going to stencil after the fact. Yeah, boom. Anyway, when it comes to sequencing your photography, it's always nice to do it and then put it in the book. All right. So, and again, the last one I have coming is a notebook, but it's the new wire bind that you can get from Blurb, which I've not received yet. So I don't have one. It's the first one. And that's a book that I leave on my desk, and I use it just for taking notes. So like if Air or Michelle write me and they say, hey, where's that thing you were supposed to turn in? I make a little note, and that's how I'm going to use it. So before we get started here, I want to just give you a little heads up. People are commenting about my glasses. Yeah, the blue screen. I don't know what it is. It's Tron. Just think of the movie Tron. So let me go to my notes here, and I just want to take a look here real quick at something. So one of the things about when you're submitting work to us in these Blurb events, number one, I'm not here to break you down. I came up in a time in photography where getting broken down by people who were more seasoned was kind of how things were done. And it never really worked that well for me. So my goal when I'm looking at your work is not to break you down in any way, shape, or form. It's to support you. And I would consider that constructive criticism, which is what we all need. No matter what level of photography you are always learning and always improving. All of those people that were there last night who were juried, who were selected to come here, they're all still learning. They came here because they want to put work in front of people who are more seasoned to get their opinion on where they can go from here. So the best photographers in the world are still learning to do what they're doing. So that's number one. Let me just jump here. Number two is when you submit files to something like this, your name should be on your files. Now, last week when we did this event about editing, everybody that submitted had their names on the files. This week was the Wild West. There were people that had not only didn't have their name on their files, but there were some people that submitted images and every single file had a different name or naming structure. And I was like, whoa, who's what? So, and the reason I'm telling you this is that if you're going to become a successful photographer and you're going to have an organization of your work, the organization of the work, whatever system you want to put in place. So, and that's what we call digital asset management. That is finding and organizing and retrieving your digital assets. Whatever system you want to use, and there are a myriad of systems out there, whatever system you choose to use, my suggestion is that you start today, and whatever that system is, you do it every day from here on out. You just have to get into a rhythm, because otherwise you can't find your work. And if you can't find your work, you can't make books. So that's a huge obstacle. So get that naming convention down and you'll be ahead of the game. The next point is don't submit huge files to something like this. Because if I was a shady character, and maybe I am, if I was a shady character, I could take those large files and I could print them if I wanted to. So you always want to submit web-sized files to something like this. And you just don't want your large files out in the world. And you always want to have your contact, your information attached to all those files, just in case. And the cool thing is your files could be floating around out there and someone sees one and they want to use it. And if your information is embedded with that file, they have a way of contacting you. That's how you make money. That's how you survive as a photographer. All right, next point is if I have a personal relationship with you, and some of you I see in the chat, I know, and I talk to you all the time. So if you submitted work, I may or may not have gotten to it, depending on who else is going to be around here. The next point is, so tonight we're talking about, sequencing. And sequencing is the forgotten child of bookmaking. You have a lot of focus on the capture of the making of the actual images, which is, as you would imagine, pretty important. Then we have a lot of talk about editing, which is something we talked about last week. And then for some reason, there's a lot of people skip over this next step and they go straight to materials and design and typography and all that. But sequencing is simply what images go first to last in the book. And you could throw in the cover as well. Like, what image would you use for the cover? And then what do you start with and what do you end with? And how do you pace throughout the book? It is a forgotten skill and it is incredibly important. And I will give you a story before we start here that shows you how important sequencing is. And then I will get to the work. And I'm going to edit through a body of my work first. I'm going to sequence that. And then I'm going to sequence 6 of you. But years ago, I worked on a project, which actually someone brought up as I was walking through Review Santa Fe. I worked on a project in Sicily for about 5 years. And I put together a body of work that was, for me, was pretty successful. It was the first time I was approached by publishers. There were 2 publishers that wanted to make books from the work. I had a gallery in Los Angeles that was exhibiting the work. It was published a bunch of times editorially. So like for me at that stage in my career, I was like, oh, this is kind of a successful body of work. So I took it to the Palm Springs Photo Festival, which was at the time was the significant photography event in the United States. And it probably still would be if COVID hadn't derailed it. So I took it there to a portfolio review and I was showing the work. And one of the pictures, if you looked at it quickly, could be misconstrued as something that wasn't about Italy. It could be misconstrued that in a way that would make it look like it was something about the United States and not a flattering part of American history. That's all I'll say. So as I thought the image itself was really good. So I put it at the very front of the portfolio. And one of the reviewers, who wasn't necessarily paying as much attention as they should, skipped past the title of my project, skipped past the lead photograph of the project, and then came to this this image that I'm talking about that could be misconstrued. And sure enough, they misconstrued it. And they looked up at me, they took the portfolio, slammed it in my face, and said, "I refuse to look at this," and stormed off. Now, a lot of people saw this happen and really went after the reviewer and said, "Look, this is your fault. Like you blew it. You weren't paying attention, and me didn't do anything wrong." I looked at it and said, "That's my fault because the sequence was wrong. I hit them with that image way too early in the sequence. I needed to let the images tell the story first to make sure they knew that we were talking about Sicily as the project." And what I had done was say, kind of my ego said, "Well, this is a really good graphic picture that maybe not everybody knows how to do, but I do." And I just put it way too early in the sequence. That's what happens when you jump the gun. Okay, so let's look at the first body of work here, which is mine, and then we're going to look at the other 6. So if you have questions, put them in the chat, and I will get to them periodically as we go through and at the end. So let me just run through these quickly. This is one of the books that I just showed you. The project is called Birding in Morocco, and a mostly true story. And so there are these pictures. There are no pictures of birds in the book, and that's purposeful, and the title is purposeful, which I can explain later if we have time. So I'm going to go through here, take a look at these. Here. Of course, I got to put a selfie in. This is 2025. Okay. So obviously this is going first. This is the half title page, has a title and my name on here. So that's going to be the first image. But what I'm trying to do here, and by the way, I was teaching when I shot these, so I wasn't really photographing for me. I was just kind of grabbing what I could at the time. But I'm going to basically take these, and I'm going to take this photograph up here because I think that is a good second photograph to have in here, because I think this is one, gives a little explanation of what this is with the text. And also this is a subtitle that plays later in the story. Don't forget about me. Okay, so that's going to be the second photograph. I think I'm also going to move this image up because I think this is a good scene setter. And in the book, this is opposed by 2 columns of text that further explain what the story is. And a lot of people think of Morocco and they forget that Morocco is on the coastline, has this unbelievable, connection to the sea. And I think that that's an interesting place to start. After that, I've got a mixture here of coastal images and then also from the mountains and places like Marrakesh as well. So I think what I would do is I would probably leave this picture where it is. And then I would potentially leave this picture where it is, because those are 2 very close location, similar pictures. But then I've got 2 more coastal images here and here. And I don't want to just dump all those in at the same time. So I would go down here, and I think what I would do, the only other change that I might make so far is I might move this person up so that we start here. We go here to me. This gives you a little explanation. Imagine this picture being offset with more text explaining the story. And then this gives you a human frontal face moment of a very simple, clear photograph about people. And I like making that human connection. I am not somebody, I don't shoot a lot of street photography, and the people that I'm photographing on the streets, most of the time I'm talking to them, I'm having conversations. And I like the simplicity of that picture starting out. Then I would probably do these 2 coastal images as I showed before, but then I would probably break this up and I would throw in, this is from Cemetery in Marrakesh. And then I would probably potentially do another image, which is kind of a nice human element, because here we have, if we go back to no people, I want to get back to the human element. So I would balance that in. I could then do another, go back to the coast. And then I don't want 2 of those in a row. So I would probably go here. And this is from the mountains. I've got another coastal, and then this picture at the bottom, I would bring up like this, because look at the gesture of the arm in the air, and then also the gesture of the arm in the air. And I think this is a decent picture to stop on because it's very clean, very simple. It's symbolic in the sense that it's end of day, which could also mean end of the publication. And in fact, in the book, one of these books that I just showed you, this is the final image that's also offset with some copies. So if we go back here, starting with the cover, this gives you an idea who the author is. If this was a portfolio style book, this would be kind of a smart thing to do, is to put yourself at the front because people want to know whose work this is. This also gives a little explanation, a scene setter, direct, simple contact with human with a clear, easy to read face, and then a little more kind of architectural, spacious. Same with this. And then also the shapes of these doors, these archways, is mimicked by this image right here with these gravestones. Back to the people and sort of the chaos of Marrakesh. Nice sort of tranquility of the sea, into the mountains, back to the sea. And I like all this, the cars here, the symbolics of the car, and then people. So that's nice little following. Simple, clean moment. I like the three faces, and then ending on that shot. So that is what I would do with my work. And okay, so let's have a look at some of the people who I chose. How does that go? Or do we could do a question. Nah, let's look at the work. We'll do questions later. So this kind of threw me off because this is work from someone named Deborah Davis. Well, guess what? There is someone who works at Blurb named Deborah Davis. And I thought, wait a second, did the Blurb person submit? But no, it's another one. So this is what Deb says. I've always been a sailor. And when I moved back to California a few years ago, I chose to live in San Pedro so I could experience the port of LA. The port is vast, overwhelming in its size and scale, and mostly inaccessible. Over the years, I've photographed it, trying to capture the shape and atmosphere and convey its immense hidden structures to the viewer. Well, I also love, sorry, let me close that. I love the Port of Los Angeles as well. I used to live in Los Angeles, and I too, at one point in my life, did a project on the Port of LA because I met the guy, can't remember his title. He was the guy that was basically in control of the ships coming in and out of the harbor. And he got me really good access, but it is a very tricky place to photograph. And now I'm sure it's way harder to get access than it was back then. So I commend you, Deb, for doing this. So let's run through some of these images. We got here, hang on. I don't know if you can see this little agonizing button. I'm gonna move it over. Okay, we got this. This, 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 nice, this. Okay, so let's have a look. Now for me, this work is relatively easy to sequence because I'm starting right here with this shot. I'm going right here with this shot. I'm going right here with this. These three immediately jumped out at me. This is kind of the perfect scene setter for, you cannot confuse as to where you are. You know that you are in a port. You may not know that you're in the port of San Pedro, but you are in a port. So, and I love how these ships, the points of the bows are just perfectly touching one another. It's a clean, simple, easy read image. That's a great place to start. And then this just takes you one step closer in there. It's, again, graphic, simple, clean, gives you a sense of scale. It's super colorful. And then boom, you take me really tight into a detail. Anybody, I was in the Merchant Marines when I got out of high school. Anybody who's been on a ship for any length of time knows that this little agonizing device is a huge part of your life because the salt water is just basically trying to destroy the boat at all times, the ship at all times. And so the mops are really important. After that, this is where it gets a little trickier. I'm not in love with this photograph. It's okay, not my favorite, although this is hilarious because, you know, the collars grow on these palms and the state doesn't want to cut them and it's the mess. But I don't know. This picture I'm not super sold on. This could be a potential ending photograph that you could run some copy over, or on the opposite page, you could run some copy that kind of sums it up. It's beautiful, end of day, late light. I love the mist off the water and the, you know, the big container ship out there. This is a good detail I like. We'll come back to that. This has some interesting framing components to it. So there is, this image is nice. And this is good simply because it shows scale. It's a busy photograph, but it shows scale. And these poor guys in that little Zodiac, looks like they're trying to paint that hull. What a task. And this one, again, I'm not super in love with this photograph or that other one. And this is a good, simple, strong picture that may or may not play into the overall thing. So let's go back here. So again, we start with 1, 2, 3. And from here, I'm going to go to the scale photograph because, one, it shows humans and I want that human connection. And I'm going to move this one over because I do like this detail, and the scale of these things is really impressive. And I'm going to go here next. And then I'm going to end with this one. And this is not a bad photograph. It's a detail, obviously, but I like this detail more. I like the other one, this detail. I think this is a stronger photograph. And this one may come in handy at some point. Not in love with this picture or this picture. So I'm going to cut those and I'm just going to put in these 7 photographs. So this is pretty strong to me. I like this a lot. I like this a lot. I love this. Again, scale. This is an informational photograph. This is not an aesthetic photo. It's informational. And when it comes to making books and telling stories, a lot of times you have to put your sort of photographic ego aside and say, if I'm trying to tell a story about the port of San Pedro, I'm probably going to have to make some pictures that are more informational than aesthetic. And that is exactly how I would describe this. This gives you a ton of information, gives you humanity, gives you scale. I love the bridges in the back and also the tug and just sort of the basic apparatus of how the port works. I think this is a successful photograph. Boom, bringing it back in tight, graphic, simple, colorful, and the size of these things are, you know, astounding. And then this is kind of a, you know, shows Deb's ability to frame things, layer things up. So this has a decent feel to it. And then I would probably end here because it's a positive photograph. It's upbeat and it's clean and simple and easy read, which sort of reflects back to the lead photo, which is also an easy read. So that would be my take on these. And again, if you're doing a book, an image like this could be on the table of contents. It could be an ending image. It could be about the author. It could be on a dedication page, those kind of things. So that's my overall take. Those 7 are super solid for me. And Deb, I would just keep working on this. It's a good story. And you know, I love ports. I'm a total sucker for anything that has to do with ports. Okay, so now we're moving on to Isabel, whom I mentioned before. I met at the Review Santa Fe. So let's talk about this. This photography project explores my personal journey of transitioning from the bustling streets of Boston to the quiet yet vibrant landscape of Albuquerque. Moving to the US for the first time at 19, I settled in Boston, where I spent a decade immersing myself in the fast-paced, dynamic environment. Now this move to Albuquerque offers a chance to witness a side of America that offers new perspective. In Albuquerque, I've encountered a city vastly different from Boston's crowded energy. Life here moves at a slower pace with moments of stillness and quiet that often contrast sharply with the urban chaos I left behind. Yet, amidst this tranquility, the Southwest bursts with color and light. So that's a really well-written, nice introduction to the story, to go say, look, I'm from Boston. My wife is from Boston, so I've been there a million times. It is very different from Albuquerque. Last night, I had some interesting conversations about Albuquerque from people who had never been there, who had just had their first experience with it. And they were like, whoa, this is a very different place. So let's have a look at this work. This is a much harder story to sequence for me than Deb's work. This is more, Isabel, this is something that I wanted to suggest. Even though this is a story about Albuquerque, there is probably a sub-story that you can focus on that will help narrow the view of what the project is about. So let's have a look at these. Quite graphic. This whole body of work is very graphic. Lots of open space, not a lot of people walking out here. So compared to Boston or New York with the East Coast cities with the number of people on the streets, this is a lovely photograph. This gesture of what this guy's doing. It looks like he's got his head tilted back, enjoying the last rays of light, beautiful warm light. Same with this little skeleton in the red chili. It's called a ristra is what the chili ristra is on the right. Super graphic, colorful. Again, lots of space. And then this photograph, which is very kind of reflective of the first one. Look at the color palette here. Now look at this color palette and that color palette and this one. So those are very similar. If you just look at these, look at these last three, especially these last two, the color palette's green. Those are cold. And look at these three, warm. This one's neutral. This is a little cool. This is a little cool. So this is a little bit harder to sequence because it is kind of a little bit of a nebulous story, but it's like, hey, this is about the city of Albuquerque. So I would start with the human element. And I initially I was going to go with this one, but I don't think I would. I think I would go with this one because this background is so New Mexico and so Albuquerque. That is kind of, this real amazing contrast of color and light. And it's pretty simple. And also, if you split this down the middle like you were producing a book, that could be an interesting cover, front cover, back cover. I would flip it so he's walking in, but that would be interesting. Then I would start basically carving up the color tones. So instead of putting all the warm tone images together, I would balance it back and forth. So starting with this and going here is not too bad. I like this contrast of warm to cold. I think this image is very similar in some ways to this image with the circular shapes. So I would also keep that in mind. So I would probably go here, guy walking, this image. Then I would go back to a warm, and I would probably save my human element for a little bit later. So I would go here, here, and also look at the dynamic element. Look at the angle of these lines are also the angle here with the shadow down the roof line. So I'd probably go here. Then I might go back to one of the colder tone images that are still daylight based. So I would go here. I would go maybe move this one here. I would go here. And these three, I'm not sure I need all three of these. I think my least favorite is this image right here. I want to end with this because it feels like nightfall. It's got that unbelievable blue-green glow that you get when the sun's down, but there's still light in the sky. I really like this. And also this little superhero here at the end, which could be representative of Albuquerque itself, like good against evil, which is very much a part of life in Albuquerque. And these two are a little bit similar in terms of color tone. This one and this one are both shot at night. You wouldn't necessarily need both of these, but I'm going to leave them both in here for now. Let's go back to and run through these. So you've got, whoops, sorry. Go back here and run through this. You're starting here, warm, human, a little bit cold tone, chaotic, human, back to the warm tone. And again, those diagonal lines follow each other nicely. Then you've got kind of this mix of day, night, and warm and cold tones that I really like. You've got the direct eye contact at the mural. Love this picture. I might do a little bit of a crop over here. I don't necessarily need to see this car, so I might do a little crop here across. It's a nice moment. And then again, back to the cold without people. Simple. This may or may not be a picture that makes my final edit, but I'm leaving it for now. And then hitting with the cold tones at night. Again, this is, if you're going to do a city project, historically, city projects for professional photographers are some of the most difficult projects ever. Talking to National Geographic photographers over the years, they would always do these city assignments, whether it was Rio de Janeiro or Berlin or wherever, and those were often considered the most difficult projects. So Isabel, if you just moved to Albuquerque, this could be a lifetime project for you, because as long as you live there, you can work on it. I love people shooting in their own backyards. I think that's the way we should work as photographers. We don't necessarily need to get on planes to go to exotic places when we have this kind of exoticism in our backyard. So I love Albuquerque. It's a very interesting city. Keep going. And also, for those of you out there, Isabel has a really cool handmade zine. I wouldn't even call it a zine. It's a handmade book from this material that's beautiful, that I shot a little cell phone film of. But if you look, I don't know if Isabel has a website or not, but you could look her up, and that handmade book is really beautiful. So really nice. Again, this is not the easiest work to sequence. It's a little trickier. The more work that she produces, the easier it will be to sequence, because a sub theme will emerge from this project that will give her direction as to where she'll be in the future. So very much looking forward to see where this ends up. Good job. All right, we're on to Leslie. Let's have a look-see here. Leslie, okay. These were taken during a workshop at Cottonwood Ranch and were selected to represent a day in the life of the ranch. Okay. All right, Leslie, you got to give me a little more than that. So I don't know, a little history. Why were you at Cottonwood Ranch? What do you find about the American West that you find interesting? All of that information, the more you can give me as a reviewer, the more understanding I will have of this project. So I grew up on a ranch in Wyoming. I was forced to ride horses as a tiny boy, and I was scared to death, and move cows and work with cow dogs and all that stuff. So I love work like this because it reminds me of my childhood. But let me also mention before we go, let me just run through these, and then I have something I want to say. So let's look here. Like this a lot. Like this a lot. This is a nice moment. These look like McNabs, these dogs, McNabs. I don't know what they are. Maybe you can fill me in. Like this a lot, a real moment here. This is what we're after as still photographers, is to get moments like this. Horse off the ground, water frozen. Nice. Detail, detail. And that. All right, so one thing I want to mention right off the bat is you've got black and white color, and you also have two different aspect ratios. You have a 35mm aspect ratio, and you have more panoramics. So you can do this. It just complicates things a little bit. It makes it a little more complicated when you have to try and balance and sequence color and black and white and different aspect ratios. So my advice would be to take these black and whites and convert them to color. I don't think they need to be black and white. I think this works better cohesively as a color project, because look at the light you're dealing with. Like, yeah, this is okay in black and white as well, but that light is the American West. That is just, you know, gorgeous. So what I would do is, I'm looking here at what I want to lead with. And I think this is a good lead photograph, because obviously it shows you're moving horses. You've also got the humans in the back here, but it's a good entryway. And I think the panoramic works really well in this regard. It's an entryway into the project, but I don't know exactly what's happening here. If they're going to be branding these horses, if they're going to move them to a different pasture, if they're going to put them in livestock trailers, I don't know that yet. So I'm kind of curious, like, oh, okay, what's happening? I also, you could go to a detail right away, but I think it slows down the pace too much. I really like this as a secondary image because it's dynamic. Horse and dog off the ground, rider's tack sharp, little bit of panning movement. It's beautifully, you know, this is not a high percentage photograph. You're going to shoot a bunch of these to get one that works, and you've got one that works really well with both dog and horse off the ground, and the rider is still sharp. So that's a really nice frame. Also tells me your skill, your photographic skill level with your camera, that you know how to do something like this, which is pretty nice. From here, I might go to a detail, but again, I think you've got two detail images here. And I think the color, again, I don't necessarily need to see this in black and white. I think the color is good. And I like this one because it gives me a little perspective with the horse, the hooves in the background, and the legs. So I might go from here and drag this one up and put this in third position. After this, I would probably say between this image and this image, I don't think you need both of these. This is a nice moment, but I think I would take that in color, and I might put that next. I'm going to move this down, this one here. These two images are pretty similar, although you've got a male rider and a female rider. But I think because you have this image with a rider and the dog in a really nice moment here, again, in color, I'm not sure you need this one. And I think this is more dramatic because the horse is in the air, the frozen water. This is a really nice frame. Like, this is the kind of frame that people who don't live in the American West buy pictures like this all the time, because this sort of sums up the romantic side of the American West. So I do like that image. And then this, I'm not sure I need this one and this one. This to me is a fantastic ending frame. I definitely want to end with this frame. This one, I don't know. It's a bit redundant. There's nothing wrong with this frame. I think it's beautiful. Don't think you need both of them. This to me is the best. And again, I'm ending with a panoramic and I'm starting with a panoramic. I'm making sense of what this work is. And so when I do that, when I start and stop with panoramics, that is what's called visual hierarchy. That allows the viewer to understand what they're looking at. So we're going to go here and we're going here. So I would cut it to these 6, and I kind of like this. Great scene setter, action, detail, nice, really nice moment there. Clean, simple, easy read photograph, and a nice moment between creatures. Action shot again, and then a beautiful ending frame. And I'm not sure these are necessary, but otherwise a really beautiful thing. And to make those frames in one day, like, that's a huge success. You hit a home run. So nice job, Leslie. Okay. Not sure how to pronounce this, Lothar, but that's what I'm going with. Being on the road, especially in the dirt road, is a metaphor for my life. The road itself is the destination. The pictures I took along the road show the discovery of my new, not so new, it's now 20 years, of my new home country. So, all right, welcome. Let's have a look at these pictures. This is like road trip pictures through the US. Got a weird device here. This looks like New Mexico. Farmland, airplane graveyard, the old motels. Oh, the old Chevy Custom Deluxe. Gotta love that with the two-tone. Looks like a little Texas roadside, Van Horn, and another road, and looks like dust storm somewhere. All right, so. All right, this is kind of the classic road trip kind of photograph. Now, you have 2 road shots, this one, and you have this one. Now, temporarily, I am going to lead with this picture, but this isn't good enough. You have to make another photograph like this that's better, and then it could potentially be the lead. And the reason I'm doing that is because I want to end with this one. This feels like a great ending point of like tracks going off different directions. I love the contrast. I love the simplicity. I love the space. So I'm going to end with that. So I'm going to start with this. I'm going to hit next with this. I'm going to go here. And this is kind of leading to the idea that there's a human coming, which means I'm going to go next to the guy in the truck. I definitely like photographs of people, and I think that they add a certain element to a story that is almost mandatory. I'm going to go over here and put this here. This is a clean and simple, classic Americana, middle of the country, farmland, machinery kind of thing, where you have this beautiful landscape, if you will, combined with the modernized mechanism of what you need to be able to do to produce food. So I think that's it's kind of an aesthetic photo and an informational photograph at the same time. I do like airplane graveyard. And I think these 2 images opposed to one another because of the repeating shapes might work well. So you could have both of these. These planes are facing left, could be on the right-hand page, and this could be on the left-hand page. Those work nicely as a pair. And then back to sort of the Americana here with the old motels, which is super classic. I'm not sure this picture is really up to par with the rest. I think you could make better photographs of this kind of thing. And I think this is just weird. I don't know what it is exactly, and that's why I'm leaving it in. But I think these two images, this one and this one, are not really as strong as the others. So I would end with this one, which gives you, again, this is a place setter just for now, because I think you could do a better photograph of this. And the reason I'm saying that is I've just seen this kind of photograph so many times. I need you to give me your version of this photograph. And I don't know what that is. You have to shoot enough of these to get something that's a little more outstanding. This, I think, trucking is a huge part of American culture, which is not quite the same in other parts of the world. Trucking, we're so dependent on trucks here. So this is informational as much as it is aesthetic. I do like, obviously, I want the human connection. That truck has a lot of history. And if you're talking about rural America, that is a very classic, common scene. And I like the fact that he's backlit, the cigarette, the whole kind of feel. It's a nice frame. And this is good. That's good. The old motel. And this weirdness, I don't know what it is, which is why I want to leave it in, because the US is littered with stuff like this that you look at and go, what was that? Why did we need that? What is it? Don't know. And then this is sort of a classic ending of the road, less traveled or more traveled. So that's what I would do from that. Not bad at all. Okay, we got two more. Let's talk to Owen. Owen says, I always loved the landscape and farming ambiance of rural Pennsylvania. I was inspired to start documenting this lifestyle, partly due to the dwindling number of farmers in the United States, specifically Pennsylvania. Capturing something fleeting will always hold meaning with my artistic vision. So, a couple of things. Again, I grew up on a ranch. Less than 2% of Americans are involved in agriculture. So again, this story, the disappearance of the ranches in the American West, a lot of the big ranches are being sold off and subdivided, which is the worst thing that can possibly happen to the land. So let's have a look here. But you used a word that I want to come back to, which let's just have a run through of these pictures. That's great mailbox. Great mailbox. No trespassing, very common. Old tire. Another mailbox. Looks you got some hay or something here. I'm not sure what crop, alfalfa maybe. More old tractor. Old tractor. Oh, that's interesting. It's a tractor. I thought it was a house initially. Farmland. Okay, so you use the word lifestyle. And when I hear lifestyle, I think people. So, Owen, your next task is to photograph the people whose properties these are. Because if you're talking about farmers and ranchers and the dwindling sort of populations, you got to start with people. So I would definitely go back and do this. Now, I thought initially when I looked at these, I thought this was a house. And I was like, oh, that's the perfect scene setter. That's the perfect image to start the story with, because I like the framing. I like shooting through the foliage in the foreground. And then I thought that was a house. It's not a house, but I still like it as a lead image because it just shows there's a lot of history in this photograph. That's an old tractor that's in disrepair, shot through farmlands, gives you kind of an overall feel of what the space is like. And then I would start dipping into some of the details. So when I thought it was a house, I thought this would be a great second photograph because it shows tractor on the landscape. This is a modern tractor that's still being used. And again, giant open spaces. And then I was going to dive into something detailed, like a mailbox of the people who were living there. Now you have two mailbox images, this one and this one. I like this one more. It's just a homemade, custom. I don't think you need both of these. So I would take this out, move it down towards the end. I think no trespassing. If you live in farmland, this is a big deal. You don't go on anybody else's property without permission. So even though this isn't maybe a beautiful photograph, it's informational. And anybody who grew up in farm and ranch country knows what this sign really means. Like you're taking your life into your hands if you go on someone's property without permission. So it's important image. And then you've got sort of man-made, and then back to sort of natural world. So I would divide those up. I would mix in from man-made to natural, man-made to natural. And again, I would get rid of that last image of the mailbox because you have two, and I think this one's better. So, Owen, my question would be, do you have a house or something that kind of shows the human connection to the land that's on scale where you could, I like this photograph a lot. I would still probably use this. I also think it's the most original use of framing that I've seen from this work, but I would look for houses or people to fill these pictures in. With, because if you're from the city, and so I grew up out there, but then I moved to a place like Los Angeles for 25 years. They were just mesmerized that I could have lived in LA. So the conversations are really fun. You'll get a lot of good stories. You'll be able to shoot portraits and really round out this body of work. But that's kind of where I would start right now. I just think you have the one redundancy with the mailbox, but everything else is just a mixture of man-made and to natural landscape. So not bad. Good job. Everybody's done really well so far. Now, this is interesting. This is from Patricia. And Patricia writes, my greatest passion is traveling and street photography. These photos were taken during a recent trip to India where I love documenting everyday life, the stories that cross my path, and the little details that remind me that even in the ordinary, there is something worth looking at twice. So this is, I like this work a lot, and it's incredibly challenging to sequence, which is not necessarily a bad thing. It just means that there are multiple components at work here. So let's run through this imagery. And I really like some of these pictures as well. So starting here, I like this a lot. And this is a challenge because it doesn't quite fit with the rest of the story, but I really like it. So I'm going to go here. First of all, India is just magnificent looking. There is just nothing else like it. Really nice, beautiful moment here. I like this. Here, look at that. Look at the color, the arms. Now we're by the river. Women, another river image. Okay, so this is a challenge because you have a couple of different things working here. You have two images, this one and this one, which look directly pertaining to the river of some sort. River, I'm assuming this maybe is the same river, maybe not, but you got two water images here. These two. Then you have one image of these of women. You have a second image of women, a third, a fourth, and these. So this image is kind of an outlier. It's not that I don't like it, but I'm trying to figure out where this fits in the theme. The same with this. I really like this image a lot, but I'm not sure where it fits yet. And this is what I said last week, kids and pets. Man, it has to be mind-blowing for me to put in a picture of kids or pets. So I'm going to take this one out. And again, that's just me because I think your other stuff is stronger. What I'm going to do is just for now, I'm going to lead with this image because I think these women, there are four images of women in here, which I think is a very important part of your story. And I think this is interesting because it just shows the incredibleness of India. You have these beautiful garments. You have a great gesture here with her arm, one arm around this other woman. You have got faces here coming through. You have all this mechanized transportation. And then look at this building, the architecture. Like where on earth, where else are you ever going to see something like this? There's a ton of information happening in this frame. I do wish I could see a little bit more of their faces. Like if you were 3 steps to the left, I could maybe get a little bit closer to your faces, and chances are you probably have an outtake of that in your files. So I'm going there first. I think this image and this image are kind of similar in some ways because you have transport and you have repetitive shapes. So in this case, these are boxes of what looks like maybe tea or something or food. And you also have this. I love the arms. I love the gestures. I love the color. This is a kind of a cool frame. And these two could be interesting on opposing pages because I think that they are a little bit similar. These two, this one and this one, I'm not sure we need both of these. this is a really nice, beautiful kind of moment right here. But I think that's what really these two pieces carry it. I'm going to leave it in here for now, and I'm going to put it after those other two. And moving up the river, two river shots, I'm not sure where these go. This one as well. I'm not sure where these fit in. At first, I thought I was going to do this. I was going to start with this because I thought, okay, maybe this is in the same general area. And before and after you shot this picture, it led into this, but it looks like a different scene in different place. And also look at the color palette. It's cold. It's blue. It's cold, which is great. I love it, but it's cold and blue. And then you got warm, kind of neutral, warm, 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 warmish, warm-ish, warm. So again, a little bit tricky. The more, and Patricia, this is something to think about. So one of the things about that makes street photography challenging is exactly what's happening right here. If there's no underlying narrative, it makes it far more difficult to put the work together. So for example, I don't know why everyone's wearing this color of sari. Why is that color so predominant? You know, the woman in the background here, this shot, that once again, here it is again. I don't know. So that is a sub theme that comes across in the writing that could give the viewer a reason to connect these photographs together. Because again, this image looks like an outlier, and I really like it, but it's an outlier. These images of the women all feel like they were shot kind of in this similar time frame, and maybe there was like a little mini theme happening. And then these two, this one and this one, are fine. I like the framing here. I think the super solid framing, and I think this is clean and simple, foreground, midground, background. I love the table, but I'm not sure how they fit into these others, which is why I put them at the end. So if I wanted to break these up, and maybe these women were just coming from the river, I don't know. I can't tell that from these photographs. You could splice it in like this, but I think this is, as it sits right now, is a little bit trickier. And I think this too, this is an image that's kind of an outlier. It's not that I don't like it. It's very informational about how things work in this part of the world. So it's important. You could potentially end with that image. But I think it's stronger if we keep these out of it, down towards the bottom, down here. And I'm going to leave this here for now, but I'm not really sure. Again, I just really like this picture. I think it's good, but here's where it really starts to me. Here to here to here to here. And then from here on, it feels like a secondary story. Like that. And I would probably skip the one. Again, there's nothing wrong with this, but when you're showing work, stronger work, and you put in photographs of kids or pets or things like that, it really kind of like makes the viewer reset, because it's all of a sudden something becomes kind of cute, and then it might in some ways diminish from the overall body of work. But I would love to see a wider take of what you have. And also, as a street photographer, it's really important to have a sub-theme story that connects the viewer to the photographs. It makes it much easier to put work together. And also, it's kind of a nice thing to have in your pocket all the time, because no matter where you're shooting, if you're doing street photography, you can connect it back to something that has a narrative to it. Okay, so we have only a couple of minutes for questions. And so let's see here. What do we have? Let's see here. Are you sequencing it that these photos were double truck spreads or multiple images per page? Greg, it's going to depend. Some of those images deserve to be on a spread by itself, and other images would work together as pairs. And that just depends on the sort of flow of the book you're putting together. Books have a narrative. Portfolios don't necessarily have a narrative. So if you're making a portfolio, you can just put strong image, strong image, strong image. But if you're telling a story, you often have to mix those educational images with the aesthetic. And sometimes the aesthetic images require a lot of space. When someone turns the page, if you've got a home run image, You don't want page numbers and captions and another image because the human eye is going to be going like this all over the page. You want them to look at your home run image and go, man, Greg is like the best photographer I've ever seen. That's the key. Then they turn the page and there's maybe an informational image or a pairing of images. What else do we have here? Do you have an opinion on whether movement should be in a left to right direction because it's more pleasant to read, for example, the action of the rider on the farm? That rider on the farm, to me, should be on the right-hand page, moving left into the spread. So not on the left-hand side running off of the page. That's a right-hand image for sure. The tricky part of that would be if you're trying to run that across the gutter, that's a tricky photograph to run across the gutter because you're either going to be splicing the dog or you're going to be splicing the head of the horse. And I don't think it's going to work. That's probably an image that works best on its own on the right-hand page. All right. We got one. Can you give a rule of thumb that's a practical tip for working on images like where, who, what, and when? I'm not exactly sure, Bjorn, what you mean by that. Can you give a rule of thumb that's a practical tip for working on images? Not exactly sure. Are you thinking that that's information that you need to include with the photograph? Maybe that's what you're talking about. So yeah, the image that's embedded, you definitely want your name, your copyright, and your contact information for people to be able to reach out to license that image from you. So, and you want your copyright to travel with that image no matter where it's at. Hopefully that answered your question. Let's see, maybe we do one more, maybe two more. How does one start their first photo book? Very carefully. No, I'm kidding. They do a show first or photo book first? Okay, so let me explain to you how this works. If you've never made a book before, bookmaking is a language that's filled with multiple dialects. The dialects could be typography, white space, design, editing, sequencing. Those are all dialects that you have to learn to become accomplished at bookmaking. Might sound like a lot, and in some cases it is, but here's the thing. Start small, start inexpensive, and start making tests. Like I mentioned at the very beginning, I made 6 test books in a week after a trip to Morocco. And I've made over 300 books with Blurb already, and I still make test books all the time. The key is to have fun. It shouldn't be a stressful process. But when you get into the professional world of photography, when there is a major exhibition, most of the time there is a book that will launch at the same time as the exhibition. Those two things go together. You'll also have an exhibition catalog of the work that's in the show, which is mostly a sort of less formal publication that accompanies it. So catalog, book, exhibition, all at the same time. All right, do we have time for one more, or is that about it? One more. When you are sequencing, who is the person you are imagining is reading this book? That is a great question, Greg. Did you ask it because you know I have an opinion on this? I hope so. I don't make books for other photographers. A lot of photographers do. The street photography community is a perfect example. A lot of those books and projects in the street photography world never leave the street photography world. And that's perfectly fine, because if you're looking for a passionate group of people, street photographers are going to be right at the top. That's a really vibrant little community of people. But oftentimes those books don't leave that community. For me, I was always more interested in what the public thought of the work than fellow photographers. So I'm always thinking about John Q. public, who doesn't know anything about photography, who may not care about photography. How am I going to put something in front of them that's going to get undivided attention? So that's who I think about, but it's a personal thing, and you might want to make books for other photographers, and that's, again, totally fine. Well, that was another good event. That went super fast, and I hope that you got some things from that. Use the code sequencing30 to get 30% off your next Blurb book. And also remember, if you've never done this before and you want to make a test book, this is a very inexpensive publication. This is a 6x9 paperback book. And if you get 30% off of that, you can literally make a book for a few bucks. Don't try to make War and Peace right off the bat. Make something small and simple, have fun, enjoy the process. And we appreciate you taking the time to be with us. And if you have suggestions for what you'd like to see in the future with future events, let us know. We can always do more editing, more sequencing. It's this is an endless process that if you ask 10 photographers, you're going to get 10 different opinions. But I'm just one guy with one opinion, but I have been loitering around photography for a long time. So hopefully that was helpful. And thank you to those who submitted. It's really fun to take a look at your work. Everybody has good work. So just keep plugging and you'll get there.